All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again, actually for the third time tonight. This is Jonathan Albin with NycosRPG, and the episode tonight, The World in Around 80 Days, and we are working on a story called Crisis in Knoxburg with my very good friend and co-conspirator, Abletop, Scott Crandall. Say hello.
Hello, everybody. The Grand Schema.
There we go. All right, so as those of you may recall, we started on this process a long time ago, at least a couple of
Gotta
longs.
be maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago at this point.
We'll have to go back and look through the. Uh, it'd be a great search. Everybody jump onto my YouTube channel and go back through all my videos over the past 2 years to find the other Knoxburg episodes. Yes, that's the
You
plan.
are
Watch,
cruel. You
watch
are
them all.
cruel.
Alrighty, but so Crisis in Knoxburg is a story that is developing quite slowly, granted, around a town called Knoxburg. And here we have built a rudimentary map of the Knoxburg area in Wonderdraft. And you can complain about my map drawing skills if you want, but I think I did a fairly credible job of putting together the locale. And besides that, if you complain too much, I'll just delete your comments. I'm kidding. I'm a kidder. Anyway, we are talking about Knoxville and Knoxburg, and we are using in particular the newly completed CIS, the Community Identity Sheet that I rolled out about a week ago, and is now available at NycosRPG.com under the Play Nycos RPG Now banner. So let's pull up our CIS and we will go to town on this. Now, Scott, have I outlined for you fairly concisely what the CIS is?
At this point, yes.
I like the way you said that. Yes, you didn't at first and it sucked, but now I understand it. But you didn't do it right the first time. So. Okie dokie.
What? I'm a little slow. It takes me a couple go rounds.
Hang on just a second. I thought I had it. Okay. All right. So the first area that we're going to talk about on this sheet to make it coherent is going to be the cultural diversity. And by this phrase, cultural diversity, I'm talking about the emphasis that we are putting on the community in terms of cultures or places, if you will, under character building. So, from that category, what do you consider to be the arguably greatest influence on this community, Scott?
Greatest influence would probably be defense.
The what?
Greatest influence would probably be defense.
Defense. Okay. You went off script. We went to number 3 instead of number 1, but okay, defense. So the community wants to be defended. What in particular are they needing to be defended from?
There have been goblin raids.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're going to focus on the goblins. Okay, so the defense of the community is a high priority. What do you consider that number to be? With 90 being absolutely paranoid, and it's the only thing we're thinking about, all the way down to 15%. I don't really GAS, but I wanted to get something on the paper.
60.
Okie dokie. Next, we're going to try to go with 2 or 3.
2 would be education.
Okay, so they're concerned with the training of their children, and since we built that academy down at the estate for the rich guy, what numeric value would you assign to their cultural concerns about the education.
Education is only education is going to be about a 55.
Okay, okay. Any other influences you want to include?
Economics,
And why would we want to have an economic influence on this in particular?
because there is a labor union trying to take hold in a certain part of town.
All right, so an instigation of some type of trade union operation would be a third influencer. And what would you consider that to be numerically?
35.
Okay, now for those of you that are just learning about the CIS, these numbers are going to reflect on communication with the local populace given what they collectively have as an opinion. And so, therefore, when the players interact with any given NPC, they have the chance of finding out whether that person has a strong stance on any one of these three. And that numeric value gives us a number to roll against so that when Scott runs this session, the player may walk up and say, "Hey, I see you got a union forming," and then we can roll immediately to see whether the guy is absolutely for the union, which means he rolled lower than the union influence number, or he doesn't give an S and he's rolled a really high number. So it's just a way to get the ball rolling as far as communication. So next we're going to talk about the relevant details of a community. And these are usually text answers, but they do have numeric values graduating from 0 to about 90. And that is showing how strong the answer is to the question. So, for example, if I say location type, a low answer, like less than 15, would be a rural setting, whereas a metropolis would be a 90, or a city might be a 65. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, so we've established that Knoxburg is itself a village, and so given our status of rural to hamlet or thorp, and then up to village, this I make this roughly a 45 to be direct in terms of numbers, but it would be a town. Does that make sense? I mean, village. Does that make sense? Did that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Next is relative position, and as we put on the map, you can see that there's a city to the north and a town to the east, and obviously an extra road that goes out towards the west. Plus, we've got the cutoff and the manor house below. So we've got a lot of a lot of potential locations, and so therefore
They're well.
their relative position, yeah, they're well connected. So therefore, they've got a relatively high relative position. And generally, I would go about 15% per direction. So that's at least a 45 up to a possible 60 for their relative position, meaning that pretty much you can get anywhere you need to get to from here. Next is means of access, and this is actually going to be rather restrictive because we don't have any known airways, or we certainly don't have any waterways that pass through the town, and so therefore the means of access are going to be limited to the roads. So your means of access would be 15 to 30%, depending on how you perceive it. Population density, I think this one I think when we talked about it the last time was a little interesting. Population density is a per capita number, meaning that if you've got for example, a rural setting but a high population, it means that if you run into a person, you're running into a family or a traveling hunting group or something. It's basically per interaction with humans is going to be a lot more bodies for a high population density. And this, of course, would reflect even in the cities. If you've got a city with a high population density, then you might have 3 or 4 families that are sharing the same dwelling space to reflect this higher population. Does that make sense, Scott?
Last time yes, we did not put a number to this last time because I'm finding that very hard to do, but
Well,
I
generally,
feel like,
I would look at it from the standpoint of one body would be 15% per capita. If it's 3 or 5 people living in a house, then it would be 30. If it's above 10 people that live on a property, then maybe 45.
so if it gets to 50, there's way, or like 60, there's way too many bodies in this one little house, essentially.
Well, you're just indicating that the population is becoming a stressor on the environment. So, if you're at 50% and you're in a city, that's a lot of bodies in every house. Social integration. This is how well the community communicates with each other. Do the people of Knoxburg share information easily, or are they rather isolated from one another, or do they not care? So 15 would be low integration, and they're over everybody's house, and their nose in everybody else's business is a high, like 50 or 60.
I was gonna put the isolation of Knoxburg at a 20.
Okay. Finally, aggression. And this is referring to how they respond to people knocking on their door, asking their opinion on stuff. Just generally,
With
are
the
they?
with the current situation, the aggression might be about 45, maybe 50, because they are dealing with the
Several. Well,
prospect of,
they're working. They're dealing with several issues. So yes, they might have a lot
yeah,
on their mind. That so yeah, that makes sense. All right. Then we went directly to the left on this page and talked about the location attributes, what they find important. And we start off with aesthetic appeal. They are concerned with what people think of them, what people uh, care for. In other words, they make sure to keep their lawns nice and neat. They don't litter when they go traveling.
yes. Aesthetic appeal of Knoxburg, again, might be 60, because they do keep up appearances.
Okay,
Being the being the kind of first place that travelers will see when they come into this area.
gotcha, gotcha. Next is cultural isolation. This is how much they keep to themselves. If it's a high cultural isolation, they don't even know what their neighbors' names are. If it's a low cultural isolation, they're pretty much in each other's business and know if somebody goes missing, they'll be able to respond relatively quickly.
Wait, so I think I have this reversed initially. Like,
Okay, so
low means they,
high number means they are very isolated. Low number means that they are very integrated.
this was gonna be at 25 for Knoxburg.
Okay. Next is this one I think we had our hardest time dealing with, and that is the concept of material wealth. And this is not talking about whether or not they're hard workers. We get to that with productivity.
Yeah,
This is how do they hold their valuables in terms of esteem? Are they going to risk their child's life? Are they going to risk their lives to go save their child from a burning house, or are they more concerned with the house being in good shape and trying to say, and therefore not pay attention to their kid? Are they actually worried about keeping the water on the fire? How concerned are they with the belongings they have?
I'd say human life would trump material wealth goods because
Well, that's good. You would hope so in most cases. But generally, how much do they hold their stuff in esteem? How important do they consider their stuff?
This is tricky because they take care of that. They take care of their stuff, but that doesn't necessarily translate to important.
Yeah, because there's one is you're showing respect for what you owned, and the other is you're um, measuring yourself by what you own.
So I'm gonna say this would probably be a 20.
Okay. Next is self sufficiency, and this one's actually pretty easy. This is how much can they do stuff on their own, and how much do they um, resist somebody else offering to help. My grandfather, for example, was a big time believer that you should never accept charity from strangers. So he would let his friends help him, but he would not help a stranger. He would not let a stranger help him because he didn't know what their motivation was. So he would make sure to
And
do it himself
that
versus
actually kind of applies to Knoxburg as a whole. I'm putting this at 45 because
we can
I
handle it
just
here. We
feel
don't need to have any outsiders involved. Gotcha. All right. Next is sophistication, and that is how much are these guys beholden to um, the not necessarily the community, but the community accessibility. So, uh, do they have um, high tech stuff? Do they have a lot of high magic stuff? Are they well versed in the ways of psychology and psychiatry, or are they just a bunch of country bumpkins?
that
So a low number is
almost
low number is the Beverly Hillbillies, and on the upper end, they are I don't know what did they call them, metrosexuals. They're very sophisticated, very up to date, very up to what's going on in the world. They've got their finger on the pulse and all of that. Or are they country bumpkins?
they're not Beverly Hillbillies, I can tell you that. I'm gonna put that at maybe 40.
Okay. And then the next one is trade relevance. Now, since we've already talked about there being union activity and businesses that are working here, we haven't gotten to the local communities' uh, work culture yet. But in terms of trade relevance, we kind of have to establish that with a need for a cutoff road to get us onto the thoroughfares to the places to the south, while we also have to have that main road going north to uh, the bay. I think trade relevance is going to be fairly high in this case. What do you think?
Yes, I was thinking maybe 60, maybe even 70, but I'm wondering whether 70 is too high.
Well, remember anything on a dice roll is uh, kind of arbitrary anyway. So if you as a game master in the game NycosRPG need never roll a dice. Never. If you want something to happen, it happens that way. So don't feel like you have to commit yourself to a die roll that's untenable ever. Just simply don't do the die roll. But alrighty, so before we go into the story details and personalities, let's go back and talk about the community's attributes. And this is referring to the town's ability to respond to external influence like personas and the actions of adventurers and maybe invasions of monsters and stuff. So agility means they respond relatively quickly at the high end, and at the low end they really have to have committee meeting after committee meeting before they make a decision. So how agile is Knoxburg?
Pittsburgh, again, I'm gonna put that at 35.
Alrighty. Next is congeniality, and this is how the town reacts to external individuals, basically on a surface level. If you walk into town, are you going to get a nod and a smile and a wave? Or are you just going to get a curt nod and they look away? Or are they going to ignore you completely? So congeniality at a low number is they ignore you completely. A high level, they're inviting you over for dinner when they first meet you.
Again, I see this as 40.
40. Alrighty. Uh, Next is empathy, and that is what is the community's susceptibility to sad stories and dramatic events? Are they the kind that knee jerk and just want to jump up and come help somebody? Or are they the kind of person that want to lay back and wait and see what the outcome of other things might be? So a high number is they are very empathic, very concerned with their neighbors and want everything to go well. A very low empathy, they're get off my lawn, I don't want to care, I don't care.
45.
All right. Next is, I think, one of the most powerful ones in here, and that's productivity. How dedicated are the workforce in this community? Are they willing to continue working even if bad things go badly? Are they the kind that if a danger comes up, they buckle? Low productivity means they procrastinators and take extra long breaks. High productivity, they work round the clock and even on the weekends or something like that.
This is going to be a 60.
All right, very busy little town. Next is stability, and by stability, this is their resistance to change. So almost the opposite of agility. This is how well they uh, understand themselves, so that they say they're going to do something, how long they're going to stick with it. So low stability means that they change their mind all the time. One minute they're really helpful, the next minute they're ready to throw in the cap, throw in the towel. So therefore, low stability, change their minds, mercurial in their behavior. High stability, they keep working on a project even after all the adventurers have quit.
Yeah, and again, I see this as a 65, maybe.
Okay. And then finally, tenacity. And tenacity is the measure of the fire in their belly. In other words, if they start down a road, how long are they going to stick with it, even if it means additional losses or difficulties for them? So, low tenacity, they change like a wavering reed and give up on things relatively quickly. High tenacity, they hold their ground and keep pushing long after it makes sense.
Yes, and Knoxburg probably has a 55 tenacity, to be fair.
Okie dokie. So now we're going to look at the community's distribution, and while the categories will vary from the game system to game system and such in terms of whether it be dark shards or uh, dread signs or whatever. Generally falls out in the following way: you got your uh, educators and scholars, you have your trade members and sales folk, you've got your ne'er do wells and scroungers, you have your public speakers, poets, priests, and politicians, so to speak. Then you've got your, I guess you call them the greasy wheels. They're the ones that get stuff done no matter how they have to do it. And then you've got the wrenches, which is your ground force workers or whatever. And so we need to know basically how many of each group as a percentage of the population. There's no restriction. You can't have they don't have to add up to 100%. Matter of fact, they shouldn't, I would argue, because some people learn more than one set of skills and have fit more than one niche in their community. So, given those, what do you think you would have for the educators or books?
Books would definitely be, I'd argue, maybe I'm gonna put that at 60 because of the academy.
Ooh, there we go. Good choice because of the academy. Then the sales folk and dealers.
Because of the labor union, I'm even though it's a new labor union, I'm gonna say maybe 50.
Okie dokie. What about scrounges and ne'er do wells?
Scoundrels and ne'er-do-wells, I'm gonna put at 30 because they do exist and they can find a place, but it's more
Well,
not,
since you made it so the community is pretty accessible, it could be that you also have a large number of indigent population as well. So that
that's true.
might account for a higher value in that. Next are your poets, priests, and politicians, public speakers, that kind of thing.
Let's put that at 40.
Okay, okay. And then the greasers, the ones that get stuff done.
I feel like that could be at 60 as well.
Okay, and then finally your raw workforce as wrenches.
Gonna put that at 75.
Alrighty, so a lot of these people are working two jobs. Sounds like the economy might be actually important to them since we already kind of established that it kind of makes sense. Alrighty,
Now I'm wondering whether I should up the economy based on.
well that's what's nice about this is that you can balance it, so you can go, oh well, I make those go up and those go down, and you'll see how they interact with each other. That kind of makes sense as well. Alrighty, so now we have all of this. Then we need to talk about the um, details of the story. These are the primary points of action in the space, and we pretty much outlined them in a previous video. So you've got the manor house to the south, which means you have the academy. You have the possible influence of the goblins, which we've only scantily talked about, coming out of the woods. Then you also have the cutoff road and those travelers that would be carrying commerce to the city to the um, east. And then, of course, you've got the main road that goes to the west, God's know where, and then the road up to Senju. So you've got several places to put your stories. The personalities in the stories in this case are those people that you have chosen either before or as you're playing to become important to the players, and generally this is how they react to your personas. But this is how where you would just literally list the personas that you would have, you would want to build persona
Yeah.
sheets for. And then finally, occupations and trades is an area on this page that on the second page that provides you with a place to put in specialists and specialties that have come into the town, either because of something that players have demanded or that you want to definitely highlight. And now we're in now are you ready for me to blow your mind? Because we went to do this. Ready to have your mind blown? Did I already blow your mind,
Well,
Scott? Or are you just waiting, holding your breath?
I'm waiting.
You're waiting. All right. Remember, I've at several different times said that the community that you're in, the setting itself, is a sixth character at the table, so to speak, an extra character at the table. This sheet is built
Yep.
specifically so that your adventure can evolve and advance along with the players. So any roll that you make or any required check against this page you need to do will advance that attribute or that skill as a positive or a negative, depending on what you want to do to evolve the community. So, if the community starts off very agile, but the players get them into trouble by making them react to something kind of like the cry of the wolf, and it doesn't go right, then perhaps their agility goes downward because they're more reticent, less likely to respond. Whereas, let's say they've heard a sad story and they were able to do something about it and they get the feel goods out of it, perhaps their empathy will improve, and so on. And by having these numbers go up, then your location becomes a living thing. And not only will you be more familiar with it, your players will get so they know the values of it as well. What do you think
Yep,
about that?
sounds pretty good.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen anything like this in any other role play system that you've played?
No, this is completely unique to Nycos RPG,
Yay.
and probably one of the best aspects of it so far.
Well, thank you.
From my point,
Thank you for your.
from my point of view, because yes, there have been city sheets for other systems that I've looked at, so I've never used them because you look at like you look at any of these settlement sheets, and it's almost too complicated to figure out, and it's like, then why did you make this? Do you not want me to build cities?
Right. Well, and the reality, I think the reason why I developed the CIS is that the the real reason to have information on your community is so that you can make it feel real to the players. And by having one that is just as alive as they are, it actually is just as vibrant and changes along the timeline as their characters do. It feels more like home. It feels more like a place.
Well,
So,
that is the like point. That is what every game master ultimately wants. But
yep, yep, yep. So we have now covered everything that I wanted to cover about this. Any additional information you'd like to share, or any
okay,
question, or any questions that I didn't answer?
you've answered one. There is one thing. You mentioned that it folds up,
Oh
but
yeah,
like,
good point. So there, if you download this and print it, it's actually a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper set up to be two 5.5 by 8 pages, or 5 by 8.5 pages. And the reason 5.5 by 8, yeah. So the reason I've done that is so this can act like a mini folder into which you can put, for example, the persona sheets of the personalities that you're introducing, maybe some introduction in additional details, like let's say you pursue the building of that forest area outward, the Sugan's Woods. Maybe you build it out more, so therefore it would have a separate folder that would sit inside of this one, and therefore your adventure is going to be easier to handle, easier to adapt for your players to the story. Does that make sense?
yeah, my question was what I was actually going to do for the game was I have a binder that I have like so plastic sleeve that you can put two pieces of paper in. And what I was going to do was put this sheet on top and then the persona sheet behind them
Sure,
and do that for each.
sure. You can
But I
do.
mean,
Yeah, they both work. They both make
uh,
sense.
but I knew it did fold up. I'm just trying to, I have to figure out whether that works for storage or how I like to, a way of storing it where it doesn't get damaged any more than like,
Oh yeah. So you
well,
you could stick it inside of a vellum or a vinyl sheet or something to protect it. There's a lot of ways you could do that. So that's all I got to say about that, so to speak. Thank you.
fairly,
Go ahead.
fairly simple once you get the hang of it. Although I will say, I guess this can apply to most anything. When you first look at it, it's going to be like, wait, what am I looking at? But it's not as complicated as it looks.
Well,
I promise.
in the master book, there's an outline of how to go about setting up each of the pieces and explaining their purposes. So once the master book is published and available, it'll make a lot more sense. Remember, if you are interested in supporting this and want to get a pre-release copy of the Nycos master book, we're going to be running basically a special from now until the end of the year, whereas you can actually purchase the Nycos pre-release master book, which will be the formal, fully published one, but it will not have any of the artwork or anything yet because it's not set up for that purpose. But you'll be able to get your hands on the book early by going to patreon.com and supporting us at the $20 level. So if you're already doing that, you'll be getting your copy once we do the print run. But if you haven't yet, make sure you get over there and do that at patreon.com/Nycos. If you like what we're doing and you want to help back us, please go ahead and click the follow button here on Twitch. And these videos also get uploaded eventually to YouTube, so check those out at NycosRPG.com. No, at NycosRPG on YouTube. Bah. And if you want access to the print version, of course, you can reach out for that at NycosRPG.com. And finally, if you just want lore about the world of Nykos and what's going on in those adventures, check out NycosRPG.info and watch our episodes on Tuesdays, because we do a Tuesday Newsday report. One of them on the Nykos print property and what's going on with the project that way, and the second is the Nykos Gnome Nightly News, and you get to hear the stories right from the adventurers who are in the games on those days, and it helps you keep up to date on this iteration's advances. Wow, that was a mouthful. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Abletop, for joining us today. I really appreciate you being here. You can go ahead and say goodbye to everybody.
Bye, everybody.
All right. I love that. And we will see you all at the next episode. Talk to you soon.